In this clip, we're going to take the AnyLogic model and try and analyze a bunch of the scenarios. They're going to line up pretty much with what we saw in the queuing models, and there's all this detailed analysis. I should emphasize here right at the outset that in a simulation setting, we're going to have to do multiple runs to estimate the performance of the system, and that is because you can think about each of these simulation runs as essentially amounting to sort of a day or two or three of operation. If you show up on a particular day, you're subject to the idiosyncrasies and the vagaries of that particular day, and it may not be a representative day. So it's going to be important to redo these simulations a number of times, let's say 3 to 5 times, and then average out the results to get a reasonable estimate of what is going on. So there's a couple of technical issues related to these simulations. One is to make sure that you're running it as long as possible. There's a cutoff in these free versions of AnyLogic of 50,000 entities, which in our world is basically customers. So we don't want to exceed that because that is a hard limit on our version. And then we'll estimate the performance over those 50,000 customers and then repeat that simulation a number of times. And part of what we're going to do is to demonstrate how to do the multiple runs here. In paid versions, it's possible to do the replications automatically, but in the free version, at least to the best of my knowledge, at the current time, because it's the free version, we're going to have to do manual replication. So let's just have a look and see what our base case is. This is the current operation. So just go back to our document. What we know is that the arrival rate is 26.4. We're analyzing each of these baristas independently because in the base case, we can think of them as serving a subset of the tables that are assigned to them. The order streams are identical, all coming in at 26.4. They all provide service at the rate of 41.1 per hour. This is equivalent to having a service time of 86 seconds as a mean. And remember that they're sort of all over the park on their standard deviation. Now, these parameters, the 26.4 and the 41.1, are identical across all three. So all we're going to have to do is just simulate one of these. And this is actually an MG1 queue. So we can use the queuing model to estimate it, or as an alternative, we could use simulation. Because it's a very simple system, I would in practice never use the simulation tool, because queuing is a lot faster for this very simple setting. But it's easily possible, excuse me, to look at complex scheduling and staffing and so forth, where the queuing models are going to break down pretty fast. So that is essentially what we're getting after here in this initial simulation. So let's go back here. Now, I'm just simulating the MG1 system, so I'm just going to lay it out here. So I need to, so that these guys wait. This is an MG1 model. They arrive here at the arrival rate of 26.4. Service rate is 41.1 per hour. That means the mean is 87.6 seconds. Mean 83 seconds standard deviation. And there's just one server. So it's as simple as just setting up these parameters here to meet that. And you can see that the arrival rate is specified here in the customer arrivals. I just want to revisit where these things live, just to convince you that by changing it here, that in fact you're changing the simulation. There's that reference to the arrival rate, and you could expand this block a little more to just confirm that. And then in the coffee making process, we previously saw that this is a truncated normal with a mean service time specified here. followed by the standard deviation. So those are those two here, means standard deviation, service time. It's fully written out. And then finally, the resource pool has number of servers listed here. So that's why changing it here is important. So I'm going to just confirm that this is the base case. Arrival rate of 26.4 per hour. My mean service time should be 87.6, standard deviation 83. Got one server, and there it is. And then I'm going to go ahead and just run this guy. Now it will show you errors. It's conceivable that something could break if you've changed anything in the model. Debugging these simulation models is not a trivial task, and building it from scratch can be sort of fraught with it could be a hair-pulling experience. So that is why we're providing you with a model, and you should be able to get through the case by manipulating the given model, doing a few replications and learning what the performance is from this. Now, I should note here that the first thing we want to do is we can see that it's running, and there are some customers coming in here. 9 have completed processing, but I'm going to want to speed this up considerably, and I need to figure out how many minutes I'm going to be able to simulate this for, before 50,000 max out here. So, excuse me. So I'm getting 26.4 customers per hour, and so the way that I would compute how many minutes this is going to allow me is, how long is it going to, how many hours am I going to be able to simulate? I will take the 50,000, that is my capacity limit for the simulation, and then divide it by the 26.4. I think I get about 1,800 hours, something like that, which is, and you multiply that by 60. So I'm going to just go with 100,000 minutes here. You can do the math with more precision, but just to demonstrate how this goes, I'm going to punch in. I clicked on these 3 little this ellipsis here, and I pop this up, and I just say, okay, you want this thing to appear in red there. That is going to be the limit of the simulation. Now, with regard to the controls, you can speed this thing up here to 5 times the speed, 10 times, and so forth. And you can see we're starting to get a distribution form for the timing system, maybe relatively normal or not. You decide. You can see that we're about 60% utilized. Now that lines up with what we know from our queuing work, and the wait time here is currently at 3.6, 3.7, 3.4 per minute. Now it's going over. Now remember that I have that situation for the base case, where there is a truncation, and it's substantial because we're sitting here with a mean of 87.6. We're chopping this thing off at 0, and because the standard deviation is 83, this here is about 15% roughly. I'm just giving you rough numbers now. So that means that we are going to get an approximation for the waiting time, and if you don't like it, then you could just use the queuing result, and that would be fine. So I'm now going to go ahead and run this thing fast and to completion. We do that here. So it runs all the way through these many thousands of customers. You can see my wait time estimate is about 3 minutes more than what it actually should be. It's at about 7 minutes here, but that is going to be due to this truncation approximation that I've got going on. See, I ended up with 44,000. I could have actually simulated a few more thousand minutes, maybe 108,000, I think was roughly about the correct answer to get to 50,000. But this is a good length simulation, right? I've got about 44,000 people that have gone through my cafe. So, I have reasonable confidence that this was an error-free simulation. It ran a while, and I've got one iteration of the runs at this level. So I'm going to note this in a table someplace. To get a second run, I go into, let's see, I believe it's simulation main. No, it's run configuration, I believe. Let me just figure this out. Just got a bunch of Zoom windows to arrange here. No, it is simulation main. And this randomness is where I want to change this fixed seed. So what the seed does is it kind of, is a starting point for the random number generators that underpin the random behavior in this model. And by providing it with a different starting seed, just literally any other number other than 2, I can go ahead and rerun this model and I get a completely different look. It's like coming in on a different day. Yes, it's a randomly picked day. It may not be a representative day, but my hope is by simulating 3 or 4 or 5 of these randomly picked days that, you're starting to get sort of a picture of what a representative day may look like. You may get a couple of not so representative days, but by the time you've done your averaging, the law of large numbers is on your side, and you're starting to get a better picture. So let's just go ahead and simulate this with the new seed. I'm going to go ahead. Just wait for this thing to build. So now I'm going to, you'd want the same run length just to keep things constant, although I could go to 108,000, presumably. I'm going to just do 100,000 again for you. Make sure you hit enter so you see the number there in red. That's the limit. We can just run through this thing fast. So what is not consistent with the queuing model is this waiting time in system. It's high. Our previous run was 7, now it's 7.5. And this was a rough day, right? We know from our other calculation that the utilization of the baristas is around 64%, but it just turned out that it's higher here because we're getting higher means. So it's higher than the 64 that we estimated from the queuing. So both of these numbers end up being high, but they are relatively consistent with our previous simulation result. And so you could use these as an approximation. 7.5 minutes may not be a long time. And if you're satisfied that it's a high side approximation, you'd be fine using this to rationalize that you're not very concerned about the waiting time in the base case, but you may be concerned or not about maybe hiring too many baristas. Right. So I think this is the base case. All you're really needing to do to set the base case up is to confirm these results here, and you can see they nicely printed out for you, in this output screen. And 3 to 5 replications, and this would be a reasonable estimate of the base case, with the caveat that you're using that truncated normal distribution instead of the regular normal distribution, and the numbers that we've got appear to be higher than what queuing theory would give for this case, and the queuing theory would be much preferred, as a rationale for or as a basis for evaluation of the base case. All right, so in the next clip, I'll look at some process innovations.